This is Adelaide O'Dunton of Healthier Living, and today we expand our conversation with Carolyn Myss. Carolyn Myss is a 5-time New York Times best-selling author and an internationally renowned speaker in the fields of human consciousness, spirituality and mysticism, health, energy medicine, and the science of medical intuition. Carolyn established her own educational institute in 2003, CMed, Carolyn Myss Education, which offers a diverse array of programs devoted to personal development and draws students from all over the world. In addition, she hosts a weekly radio show on the Hay House Network, and she maintains a rigorous international workshop and lecture schedule. After completing her master's degree, Carolyn co-founded Still Point Publishing and headed the editorial department, producing an average of 10 books a year in the field of human consciousness and holistic health. Simultaneously, she refined her skills as a medical intuitive with the assistance of Dr. Norman Shealy, a Harvard-trained neurosurgeon. And she developed the field of energy anatomy, a science that correlates specific emotional, psychological, physical, and spiritual stress patterns with disease. She has published many famous books, and included amongst those are the popular titles which many of you will recognize, and hopefully you have read: Anatomy of the Spirit, Why People Don't Heal and How They Can, Sacred Contracts, Invisible Acts of Power, Entering the Castle, and Defying Gravity. She truly has been instrumental in shifting our awareness about the nature of health and healing and how we can heal ourselves, and really understanding the spiritual path that it provides for so many of us, and what a gateway it is in terms of bringing about that wholeness in terms of body, mind, and spirit. So I am truly grateful and honored to have Carolyn Myss with us today.
Thank you so much.
And tonight, Carolyn's topic is psychic and energetic disorders, what they are and how to recognize them. And I felt when I got this topic, this is a new topic for me and perhaps for many of our speakers, so I'm very excited about it. And I want to just start right out and say, well, what are psychic and energetic disorders? What do you mean by that?
Well, let's start out with understanding that we've crossed a Rubicon, Sonia. We've crossed an energy Rubicon. We are now living in what we could call the age of energy. Our technology is energy. We talk about energy medicine. We are dealing with the energy arts. And all of this, look at the way we now approach ourselves. We very much deal with the energy part of ourselves, and we are very interested in the impact our thoughts and our attitudes have in our life and in our biology. And so we've redefined the territory within which we live and exist and breathe, and we've extended our field of operation far beyond our biological boundaries to have energetic boundaries. And those energetic boundaries are also psychic. And so in as much as we now have psychic a field of operation, we are more porous, if you will, to the world that the physicist would refer to as the land of dark matter, the field between you and me. That's not empty space. It's filled with, for lack of a better way of putting it, psychic free radicals, the energy that is just discharged from all of us. It's very interesting how naively people approach things. They think that if you're not, that you consciously practice something the conscious arts only in healing, but if you're not healing something, they forget all about the principles of energy medicine unless they are working in energy medicine. And then they cease to think about what their attitudes are up to. And they cease to think about what their conscious mind is up to or what their unconscious is doing. Not aware that it's generating psychic free radicals constantly. And that those are as subject to the laws of creation as any other positive conscious thought form that they're setting in motion.
Well, aren't most of our thoughts subconscious, so that are they all psychic free radicals floating out there in the quantum soup?
Well, let's face it. If how many, most of the thoughts that we generate, if you were to just be still, if you really, really, really were to spend a day observing your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, without forcing them to be positive, without forcing anything. If you were just to be in your what you just normally generate, and be in the observational zone, and just observe what you organically generate, you would observe that left to your own devices, the majority of what you generate is negative. Not because you're negative, but because most people can't tolerate distraction. I mean, they can't tolerate empty space. They can't tolerate silence. They haven't been taught to love silence. They in fact have been taught to find stress, to look for stress, to create stress. So if they're in silence for people is stressful. So rather than being in silence and understanding that silence is tranquility, they instead think silence means something's wrong. Something's wrong. I need to go, I should call somebody. I should talk to somebody. And they create more stress for themselves.
So you're saying all the activities that we usually feel compelled to do create stress.
And they come from negativity. Mm-hmm. They come from an inability to be still. Mm-hmm. And that comes from an inability to listen to oneself. Mm-hmm. Because there's something you don't want to hear. There's something inside of yourself you don't want to be still with. I don't want to pay attention to that now. I don't want to know that now. I don't want to deal with that now. I'm too afraid to be alone. All of it comes from some form of negativity. And what you have to understand is by saying negativity is not the same as saying you're a negative person. So let's be real clear about that. And all of this is a form of what has the makings of psychic disorders and psychic disruptions, because we now have a very active psychic lives. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, when you're saying we now have them, haven't we always had them?
No, not in the same way, because we now actively pursue our psychic lives.
Okay.
We now actively pursue the development of our intuition.
Right.
We are now diving in very actively. We didn't do that before. Your grandparents didn't do that.
No. We probably didn't do that. I mean, it's only in the last 20 years, and now it's really accelerated that everybody, we want to become more intuitive. We want to develop these skills.
Exactly. So you see, that's what makes us a very different species than our elders and the previous generations. They did not pursue themselves with the vigor that we do.
And our pursuit directs us inward, right?
Yes.
Even though because in order to cultivate your intuition, nobody's going to give it to you. There isn't a pill you can take. There's not a mysterious thing. Ultimately, you always have to go back to yourself.
Right.
In order to access it. So why is it? What are these psychic and you say people are afraid?
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't want to go there. They don't want to go into the silence because they're afraid.
Mm-hmm.
What is the core of the fear? What's going to happen?
There's more. The core is a complex thing. It's not a simple thing to explain, but I'll describe it. The core is, we're going to start with this premise, and that's that at the core of every single crisis in our lives, the core of everything, is that we are not facing a truth. Whether that's an illness or a relationship gone bad, whether that relationship is with ourselves or with another person or with a job, if something is going belly up, it's because we're not congruent with it. We're not dealing with a truth. And one of the reasons people keep their lives in distraction is because they don't want to deal with a truth whose time has come to be realized in one's life. I'll give you an example. A person is an addict, but a person doesn't want to face that. So that person keeps his or her life in complete distraction and chaos because that person does not want to face the truth that he or she is an addict. Now, everybody else may know it, and they create psychic disruption everywhere. They walk into a room. Everybody knows the person's an addict. Everybody knows it, and they can, quote, feel it. Quote, the atmosphere in the room shifts the moment that person walks in. Because no one will talk about the truth. So they begin to create an atmosphere of lies and deceit. Agreed upon, we won't bring it up. So everybody creates this atmosphere of discomfort because they've all agreed to lie. And you can feel it. This is a psychic disorder, an agreed upon lie.
Well, in a sense, many of our lives are founded on a lot of agreements that we make that are lies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Now hold that thought.
Okay.
Hold that thought. Because simultaneously, the spiritual path is founded on truth.
Right.
And now you see the collision point.
Yes, I do. And I'm going to ask you one of our audience's questions because it goes right to what you're talking about. And this is a caller from someone who's writing in from Calgary, and she says, it seems like everything that could possibly go wrong has, from my health, my finances, my mental and emotional health, my relationships. What's going on?
I haven't a clue. I haven't a clue. I will describe something in general, which is this. It's high risk for me to jump in and tell somebody what's going on in their whole life through a secondary person. I don't even know who this person is.
That's true.
But, so I'm going to be honest and say I haven't a clue what's going on with that person, but I will describe this, and that's an archetypal pattern. That's the phoenix crushing into the ashes. Okay? When a person's life completely bottoms out in every single arena, the first thing that a person needs to realize is no human being can choreograph that many disasters simultaneously. That has all the hand marks of God, because no human being can do that. No human being can possibly can possibly make sure that, pardon me, everything in your life falls apart at the same time. That takes divine intervention. Now, people are accustomed to thinking that divine intervention means that you're saved by the bell, that some kind of grand miracle happens. But divine intervention also looks like that. It also looks like everything that the rug gets pulled out from under you. That's also divine intervention. It's just that we are so simple-minded and so accustomed to working in this silly little tiny model of reality that says if I'm not comfortable, that I'm doing something wrong. That the model of the universe I live in is one that's essentially based on pain or pleasure, right or wrong, good or bad, polarity. And if I'm good, bad things won't happen to me. And if bad things are happening, I need to know why. I need to know why right now. Because if I'm not comfortable, by God, I need a reason. It doesn't occur to anybody that discomfort does not mean something's wrong. That by having to let go of something does not mean loss. It means change. And that change is the nature of life. Yep. And that if a person sits back, and if they were really honest and intuitive, and we live in the intuitive era, and they unraveled their monitor within, they would recognize that they received signals long before everything bottomed out, that everything was going to bottom out. They probably received signals, let go of this, let go of that, long before it was taken from them by circumstances. Because that's usually how heaven works. But most people don't want to face, what were we talking about? The truth. They don't want to face the truth that they're getting those signals. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to be in the silence. Because when I'm in the silence, I'm getting signals, I'm getting instructions that I don't like. So I'll pick up the phone and I'll stay distracted. Because people think intuition is all about guiding them to be safe instead of discernment, instead of what it's really about, which is guiding people, period. It's guiding you to make changes when you need to make changes. It's not about your safety. It's not about your comfort, and it never has been. That's what that silly thing, The Secret, has done more. The Secret became popular because it gives people the illusion that they like, that they somehow can click their feet together and their shoes together and make everything okay because they just want to think happy thoughts. Look at this world. Does this look like this is a world that can be created from happy thoughts?
No, it doesn't.
This is nonsense. This is a world that is a product of people who are not looking clearly at the world.
So, your definition of intuition that was for me a new definition of intuition, and I think for many people it sort of alters how they may have been looking at intuition. And this whole idea that intuition is taking us to a place where we need to look, examine, and deal with change.
Absolutely. Your gut instinct has always told you the truth. Mm-hmm. And that's what intuition is about. It's about truth. It's about truth. It has always functioned at that level. Whether you're in a restaurant and your intuition peeks up and says, "You're not going to order that. You're diabetic. What are you doing eating that?" And then the next thing you know, you start rationalizing and fighting it. And you make up a lie. And you say to yourself, "I deserve it. I've had a bad day." And you pull out pain to rationalize and battle with your intuition. And your intuition surfaced because it wants to save your health and save your life. But you make up a lie. And in order to live with that lie, you have to go back to your childhood and dig up a wound that rationalizes why you deserve something. I really have been unhappy, and you just don't understand. I had a bad childhood, and that's why I did what I did today, and I just deserve this. And out comes the drama. When in fact, it would be a lot easier if you were just honest and said, I just got a gut instinct. It told me not to eat this, but I really don't care. I want it. And that would be a healthier move. But instead, people do these big dramas because they can't face the truth. They can't simply say, I just got an intuitive hit, and it told me that if I eat this, it would be a big health mistake, because that's the truth. And I'm developing my intuition and my interior self so I could be more conscious. And I am more conscious right now because my intuition is telling me not to do this. But I am clearly, and of my own free will, choosing not to listen. Why? Not because I've had a bad childhood, but because I don't want to.
So one of the things that this is saying to me is that, because I hear constantly from people who say, I don't know. I don't know how to listen to my intuition. I don't hear my intuition.
Yes,
essentially, this is saying you hear it all the time. You
totally.
just don't like what it's saying.
Bingo.
Yeah.
You don't get that all of those little nudges, all of the times when someone says, do you care what restaurant we go to tonight? And instantly comes an emotional response, yeah, I do. But they'll say, no, I don't. And the reason is, then when you ask them about it later, they will all give you the same response. I just didn't want to create, trouble or anything. No, you didn't have enough self-esteem to answer the question honestly. So what you did was you betrayed yourself. You made up a story, and you decided that you didn't want to create conflict. So instead, you put yourself into conflict, and that's called a psychic disorder. And you go into a state of conflict, and then you go into a state of resentment. Then you go to the restaurant you really didn't want to go to, and you make up another story about how your feelings don't count. Everybody else's do, but not yours. And so the story goes. And this is called betrayal, self-betrayal.
So the landscape of psychic and energetic disorders is lying to ourselves?
Absolutely.
Pretending that...
Absolutely.
Pretending or ignoring our feelings, our intuition?
That's one part of it.
That's one part. Okay, more.
That's one part. Here's another part. Another part is that there is a genuine truth, a reality, to the fact that as a person focuses more on their inner life, the way we've gone about focusing in on our inner life is very imbalanced, Sonia. It's tremendously imbalanced. Oh, Adelaide, I beg your pardon.
That's fine.
Adelaide, I beg your pardon. It's very, very imbalanced. And I say that because while we speak about spirituality, we've gone about it through the mind. So everything is a very mental journey, but we think we're going into the spirit. Except we do it mentally. And you can't get to the spirit through the mind.
So how do we do it mentally?
Well, there's never any prayer.
Yeah.
There's never any discussion about the nature of the soul. There's never any discussion about what happens after you die. Everybody likes to talk about when they died before, because they can make that up. Oh, I lived here and I lived there. But they never talk about whether their actions in this life have any repercussions after they die now. They never talk about matters of honesty or integrity. Nobody in my 25 years as a teacher has ever come into my workshop and said, I'm in stress because I can't tell the truth. I simply can't tell the truth. I'm a liar. Nobody ever has come in and said, I steal. I just can't help it, but I steal. I've had 2 people do that, but only 2. And I can assure you, There are a lot more thieves than I've met. Nobody has ever come in and said, I compulsively break my word. I tell my friends that I'll keep a secret, but I don't. I quickly betray my friends the moment they confide in me. Now, what people don't get is that these are crises of the soul. Acts of betrayal are crises of the soul. Okay? When you pursue matters of the spirit, you have to look at issues that why you operate in shadow, why you fear being humiliated, what pride does to you, what your anger and rage does to you, where you are vulnerable within the arena of human life.
Why you're terrified about being exposed. I mean,
precisely.
Every one of those things that you said, as I just scan my life, and I'm sure other people are doing it on this call,
right.
It's the terror of
absolutely,
exposure.
Adelaide, absolutely. And I'm going to add something here, and that's that. When people talk about the inner spiritual life, classically, you don't go in the soul without an escort. You don't go there unescorted without a spiritual director. You don't go in deep. Because here's an example of why. If I was your spiritual director, and you came to me and you said, I am wondering about the deeper reasons for which I was born, my response to you would be, are you actually ready to pursue that? Because you know what's going to happen. And you would say to me, yeah, I think I am. My response to you would be, okay, I want you to go into prayer. Because you know that by asking that question, it's really an invocation. And you are requesting that everything that is a distraction in your life, an ego distraction, get taken away from you. You know that. That's what that is. And it's going to be painful. And you're going to go through that pain because it's a good pain. Now, within our society, we see every pain as essentially an enemy that we have to confront, that we have to drug, that we have to release. But within the world of the soul, pain is not an enemy. It's a guide. It's a guide. And it represents the breakdown of illusions that need to be dismantled. Things that you thought were true that are not true. And when someone says, I wonder what the greater reason is for my birth, for my purpose, that is the soul, the ego in a person thinks that it's some kind of glamorous job that they could turn around and say to somebody, see how special I am. That'll never, ever happen. The soul is an instrument of humbleness. And the ego so fears being humiliated that these two go into a juxtaposition of a type of a battle for which will dominate in the individual. And when someone says to me, how come my life is falling apart? It's very evident to me that a person's inner soul and the soul life is taking over the world the ego had built for that person. And the ego can't hold on to the illusions. But the person doesn't know and recognize the world of the soul and doesn't know how to get there, doesn't know how to pray, doesn't have any faith, cannot recognize how the inner world works, has never bowed their head, taken off their shoes on sacred ground, and said, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know how to hear you, I don't know how to listen to you, I don't know how to be silent, I don't know how to be still, I don't even recognize when I'm in a dark night. I expect everything to be given to me, shown to me. I think it should be easy. I feel I'm full of entitlement, and I have no idea, and I don't even trust you. I don't even trust that you're out there, because if it were up to me, I would demand that you give me a job that everybody can see, and that's what I think my purpose is. And if you tell me my purpose is to serve humble people, you've got to be kidding. Because it doesn't work for me.
No, and I want something that's going to make sure that I look good.
Right.
At the end
Bingo.
of it, for sure.
But you see, when it comes to prayer, you don't get into your soul unless you know how to pray.
Well, let's talk about that, because that was one of my questions.
Mm-hmm.
Because to go to the place that you're describing, for most of us, is to go to a no man's land, a place where we don't want to go, and we have no language, we have no capacity.
Adelaide, why?
How do
why
we pray?
is that? How can we talk about having been in a spiritual journey, and you would ask me a question like that? Think about that. To call it a no man's land, and then to even that we would be having this discussion after decades of thinking we're in a spiritual.
Yes.
Why that we would even have a discussion, a question about how do we pray at this stage of the game?
Because for many of us, as deep as the longing and the desire for a spiritual journey, even when we pray or meditate, it remains something that's in the head. It's of the mind.
Bingo. And why do you think that happened? That we put it back in the head? That the body, mind, spirit template never, ever, ever came to be?
Because
body,
the
mind
is easy. Because the mind gives us an illusion that we can control it.
Exactly. It's body, mind, mind. The spirit never got animated. We never got there. We never made it. We never, ever made it. It's body, mind, mind. We never got there. You know, by now, we should have figured out we should have made it into a far more humble society. We should have become far more comfortable in our soul skin, if you will. We should have figured out that the spiritual life is about inner illumination, that it's about the pursuit of truth, not about the pursuit of health and vanity, and about the pursuit of wounds. Since when is spirituality about the pursuit of wounds? Where did that come from?
What do you mean, the pursuit of wounds?
One's therapy, one's history. Where did that come from? Turning it into a whodunit. Where did that come from? If you look at every single spiritual master that has ever really rightly acquired the title of master, none of them has ever instructed his or her disciples to go back into their childhood and seek out the people who hurt them. Never have they done that. They have all said, get your attention here right now. Right now. I want your attention here right now. There is no such thing as your history. Now, having said that, let me be really clear about something. People have gone through some people have gone through the most brutal experiences in their childhood. Brutal. I mean, things that are incomprehensible. And people don't forget those experiences. They become part of their psychic life, their emotional life. But if I'm looking at you right now across from me, I still have you here in April 2011. And I look at you and say, I don't want you to forget those experiences. You will never forget them because they are part of you. But what you are going to do is find a way to live with them in such a way that you refine the jewel in the experience. And you go on, but you don't go backwards. You go on, but not backwards.
So my relationship is breaking up. I'm losing my house. Dealing with my health. Whatever the crisis is, the mandate is.
When you are going through all of these, let me put it this way, the biggest mistake a person makes, let's start it this way, is to start asking, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to you? It's happening to you because it is, and that's your answer. It's happening to you because it is happening to you. Obviously, it's happening, okay? You don't have time to go on a wild goose chase and try and figure out why it's happening to you, because asking that question presumes that it shouldn't be happening to you.
Right.
That it should be happening to somebody else, but not you.
I'm special. It shouldn't happen to me.
That you, somehow or other, were born under a lucky star and the luck ran out. And somehow, this is a huge, huge act of massive injustice, and God is screwing you. And so, asking that question, I assure you, will not help you. You cannot reason with God, you can't reason with chaos, and you can't reason with disease. So asking the question, why is this happening, will never help you, which is why I won't answer that question. It won't. The second thing is, once these situations start, you ask yourself, okay, how do I move forward immediately? You don't go back, because it's obvious that your history has just been taken from you. There is nothing back there. Now, people make a great mistake by deciding, I'm going to go back there and turn all my attention into punishing people and finding out who the culprits are that put me in this position. Or, here's your choice, bitter or better. If you decide to go bitter, you'll go backwards and spend all your energy in self-pity, lawsuits, and figuring out who to blame. And you will become vampiric and a failure, and you will become ill, and everything around you will drain out of you, your finances, your resources, and eventually your health. Because there's nothing served by going backwards. It's a dead zone.
How do we move forward?
What you do is say, okay, everything's been taken from me, except I still have my health, I still have creativity, what do I still have? Take an assessment. What do I still have? I still have friends, I still have family. What do you still have? Still have creativity? What resources do you still have? And remember, health is a resource, eyesight's a resource, hearing, creativity, enterprise, adaptability. All of these things are resources. Don't just decide that resource is money. Every single thing, ingenuity is a resource, faith is a resource. These are all, optimism is a resource. These are energetic psychic resources. Do not just list money. Only an ordinary entitled mortal who intends to go belly up decides that money is their only resource. Now, after you've listed all your resources, you then put together a plan that says tomorrow, every day, you do 3 positive things. But you do not allow yourself to cycle into self-pity. You don't tell your story again and again and again to people about, oh, poor you. You are not allowed to do that. You do not do that. You're not the first person who got wiped out, and you certainly will not be the last. But you don't make that your story. You don't make it your identity. It's an experience that happened to you, and you move through it. But you don't make it your story. And every day you do 3 positive things to move the wheels of change forward. Do you have to contact resources in terms of, okay, I've got to try something new. What new forms of contact do I need to do? And here's something that that changed my life. I know this sounds like a really wild segue, Adelaide, a really wild segue, but my avocation is military history. I read military history compulsively. And so I've read a lot about especially World War II and the wars in Europe. And so I've read a great deal about the Warsaw Ghetto and the Holocaust and et cetera. And there was a superb book that came out 3 years ago, Who Will Write Our Story, about a Jewish historian who gathered the histories of the people in the Warsaw Ghetto while he was in the Warsaw Ghetto. And one of the observations he made about the people who had survived the most during the terrible times of the Holocaust was this one quality, and that was adaptability. And that one quality may well be one of the most powerful graces that a person can be granted, is the grace of adaptability. Because if a person is not adaptable, I promise you, healing is going to be an obstacle course. And whether it's healing the trauma of loss, like the loss of a job, the loss of a marriage, or the loss of whatever, or healing an illness, because what a person will do, what a person cannot do, is adapt to change.
Exactly, because that's what I was going to say. To say adaptability is to deal with what most of us are terrified to do, which is to deal with change and to deal with loss.
That's right. They won't be able to do it. They go backwards. They'll say, but I've always been a teacher, but I've always been a corporate mogul, but I've always been this. And they cannot adapt to the change that's happening in the moment. And from a totally different perspective, totally wild, different perspective, I feel like telling all the listeners, hold on to my coattails, because I'm the sort of teacher that goes from the ground floor to the penthouse real fast. So hold on to my coattails. From a very different perspective, that's exactly like saying to the heavens that you've made a mistake with what's happening to me, and therefore I will not adapt to the opportunities that are coming into my life right now. I will not adapt, because you've obviously put different opportunities in front of me that required my old identity be completely and suddenly taken away from me. And I can't see that, and I don't want to see that. I continue to look for jobs or a world where my old identity still exists, and I cannot see it. And that's because it doesn't exist anymore.
Carolyn, we're living in a world where on individual and national and on global levels, we're all in this vortex where things are changing. Mm-hmm. And as you describe this, I'm sure that at a core level and at an intuitive level, we have a sense of recognition, but also that some people may feel tremendous fear, because it feels literally like you're walking through a door to something, when you talk about telling the truth and really acknowledging where you are, you're stepping into a land and an arena that you may never have been in before. I want you to talk to us in terms of some of the tools. People are asking the question, how can we learn to pray?
Okay.
How can we meditate? Because I believe that many of us do not know how to pray. I am a spiritual practitioner. I pray. I don't know how to pray. That's something that I've come to, that there is a level of prayer that I don't know how to pray.
Okay,
so
let's begin with this. First, let's go with first of all, everybody, let's start with the understanding of what prayer is. And that prayer is your vehicle or vessel for withdrawing from your five sensory world, withdrawing from your sight, your sound, your five sensory world, your world of what Buddha would call distraction and illusion, withdrawing from that and entering into what Teresa of Avila would call your interior castle, a world, your entry into a place of deeper truth, of deeper truth. So I'm going to say this again. What prayer is withdrawing from the noise and distraction of the world into a place of profound silence in which you can center yourself in such a way that you can clearly discern what is illusion from what is truth. That's how we're going to understand prayer. That is what prayer is. Next.
Meditation. The question is, how do they meditate?
The first, what you have to understand about meditation and prayer is that these are devotions. You have to become devoted to the practices of prayer and meditation, which means you show up every day and you participate in the withdrawing of your five senses from the world of illusion. Meditation, if you want to sit still and focus on your breathing, the object is to withdraw from chaos and enter into silence. Your obstacle course is you and the expectations you bring to the practice. You are going to think that because you're doing this, you should be rewarded. You are going to think that because you are entering into the practice, you should immediately be relaxed. You should immediately hear guidance. You are, all of you, undisciplined. You are not accustomed to showing up and doing a devotion to be devoted to the divine on a daily basis in such a way that you feel awe, that you know that I am doing this not because my body needs to relax or because my mind needs to relax, but because I am engaging with a force that is holy and is greater than me, and I want union with that force every day. And I expect nothing from that force. I simply need to merge with the grace of that force. And I cease to use the word energy from this point on, because energy is for amateurs. The word energy is for those who cannot bear to recognize that this world is sacred, that everything in this world is in fact not energy, but grace. But in order to use that word, a person has to pray. To hold another in grace instead of saying, wow, that's a lot of energy around that person. To swap that and say, you know what? You're not in a field of energy, you're in a field of grace. I have to recognize the divine in you. And if I do that, I can no longer ever treat you with anything but love. It is impossible for me at that point to not recognize your sacredness. Mm-hmm. That is a high altitude to live at. Most people can't take that altitude. They prefer the word energy because there's no holiness to the word energy. There's no sacredness to it.
As you said that, it occurred to me that in holding that, everything is sacred, everything is grace, then if I'm dealing with my illness or my health issue or whatever the challenge is, then that too is grace.
Right. People don't heal when they use energy because there's no sacredness to it. They may feel better temporarily, but it won't get them out of hell. I can promise you that.
So I want to ask a question because that people are saying... No. Okay.
No. I am not done with prayer.
Oh, good. I'm sorry. Let's talk about prayer.
Now then, we're going to do an example of a prayer.
Oh, beautiful.
Because without that, what good is this? What is it? So I am going to just read a small prayer so that you have a sense of what the difference is between talking and feeling grace. About talking and then slipping into the power of grace. Slipping into it. So I'm just going to read this prayer, but I'm going to take all of you and just listen to this. Go with me in this. And as you do, I want you to just close your eyes and just let me take you into this prayer. I stand in the presence of the one who is making me. I stand in the presence of the one who is healing me. I stand in the presence of the one who is guiding me. I stand in love and adoration. I live and die in the flow of grace. I live and die in the sacred. I live and die in the divine. That is a prayer. You don't ask for anything. You're not asking for stuff. You're not asking, it isn't a Christian prayer. It's not a Buddhist prayer. It's simply the acknowledgement. I stand in the presence of the one who is making me, who is healing me. I stand in the presence. You close your eyes, and I stand in the presence. Teresa of Avila had the most beautiful prayer, and I pray it all the time. She would say, let nothing disturb the silence of this moment with you, God. I say that constantly. Whenever I'm distracted, whenever I'm crazy, which is quite often, let nothing disturb the silence of this moment with you, God. And she would always say, like I do, hover over me. Hover over me. Hover over me. Just dwell in that. Just imagine grace hover over me. And I want you to think about that. Hover over me, God. I have to make a decision. I have to be with somebody who stresses me. I want you to think about that when you're talking to someone and you know they've asked you a question and you know the answer is important to them. And you think, God, give me the grace of counsel, because what I'm about to say is going to stay in this person's heart for a very long time. And this is when you need the grace of counsel. How do you pray? Like this: God, counsel me, because what I will say will stay in this person's heart for a very long time. I cannot afford to speak the wrong word. This is prayer. This is how you pray. A constant inner dialogue where you don't even question for a moment that the moment you pray that grace is in you. The moment, hover over me. Don't let me go. Don't let me out of your sight. Don't let me out of your sight. Hover over me. This is how you pray. Okay, what's your next question?
I'm just taking it in, but, well, my next question perhaps is, I think it's something that needs clarifying based on what you've said. We keep getting told we have the power to heal ourselves. We are responsible for to take responsibility for our illness or whatever the situation or challenge is. So, do we heal ourselves?
No. End of that one.
Okay.
Nobody can heal themselves like that. Stop it. Everybody stop it. Stop with this propaganda. Healing is a mystical experience, and it requires I've been at this for 25 years. Healing is a mystical experience, and it requires the presence and cooperation of your soul, and that requires grace and the divine. And I have no interest in religion. Let me make that real clear right now. To me, all religions are costume parties. But when it comes to the sacred, without an understanding of your own sacredness and your need to have a deep and profound reverence for something greater than yourself that isn't done through a book, club, or a seminar, but through humbleness and prayer, you're just not going to get it. You just don't get your place in the universe. This isn't about, your mind cannot heal your body because 99% of the time your mind is the place that needs the healing. You need the participation of a force much greater than your mind. You need your soul. This is why I wrote Defy Gravity. You need the graces. And that's in there. And entering the castle is about prayer and getting into your soul. And if you have an interest at all in these two things, those are the two of my books. You can leave the rest alone. But those are the two you need. And if ever there was a time when people need to understand their soul and their power, and the power you have to change things through your capacity to love another person, to love the outside world, the power of your own integrity, I will tell you, it's now. It's now. So if there were two contributions that I could make to this world, it is entering the castle and defy gravity. So,
and at this time that the times that we're living in, and in terms of our sacred contract of America, do you see what can we contribute in terms of that sacred contract, and do you see America being able to fulfill its contract?
Oy, oy, oy.
Do you want anything about it? Oh, it's too big. Yeah.
Well, I will tell you, I recorded a tape series.
I know you did, and I know we're going to have we also have the CD, The Sacred Contract of America.
Oh, well, I recorded the CD on The Sacred Contract of America, and by the way, I just finished a tape series on prayer.
Wonderful.
Which will be coming out later this year.
Okay.
But The Sacred Contract of America, let me say that if anything awakens, one of the things, the most important thing that Americans should learn during this time of great transition is that democracies are born out of bondage. We were born out of bondage in the 1750s, 60s, 70s, and 1776 onward. And from that bondage came a phenomenal creativity and enterprise. But from enterprise comes wealth, and from wealth came complacency, and then apathy. And from apathy came a government that people didn't care about, which characterizes the last 4 decades of the United States of America. People did not care about their government. They did not consciously care. They looked the other way. And instead of this country being about the management of freedom, of philosophy, of its philosophical principles, it became a shopping center. It became, and it reached the apex of that when, after its attack in 9/11, the president at that time
said, "Go shopping."
Said, "Go shopping."
Yes.
Go shopping. Which symbolically said it all. Did not tell the public Let's adhere to the principles. This has been a crime against humanity in the slaughter of 2 buildings. Did not reach for the highest pinnacle, but the lowest. And Americans, instead of seeing and recognizing that this is a country, and I find this really interesting, where this was founded because people were begging to find work and to come here to work. But our values the last 30 years were to not work. Is it any reason we're unemployed? Our values shifted to how soon can we retire and not work. It is no surprise to me at all that we now have unemployment, because our values psychically shifted from the right to work to the right to not work, and now we got what we asked for. We're unemployed. We get what we create, what we image as a whole. Our values crumbled, and we began to value not working more than working. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I give you the United States. Now, where we go from here depends on how well we wake up and we return civics to the classroom. We make sure our students, our children, learn civics. It's now out of the classroom. We put it back there so that the children grow up learning how to be good citizens. They don't even know what that is. The children in school now, they won't know their Constitution and they won't know their Bill of Rights. How clever is that? And I wonder what that's all about. No. The country has a lot to do to become the United States again.
As individuals, you've basically left us with a charge, as I hear it, in terms of our willingness to face the truth and to go into the interior castle. You've given us an insight into real prayer and meditation. And to go there means to be willing to develop a relationship with change. Yeah. So as our time draws to an end, I would ask you if you can say anything or give people so that they can begin that process of telling the truth and developing a relationship with change, since so much is about avoiding it and being distracted from it.
Well, I would tell people to begin with never betraying themselves again or another person. Live a life without betrayal. That's number one. And that's going to be hard. Okay, that's going to be hard. But that's where and number two, become very aware of what happens in the country and become active in making sure the world you live in becomes a better place. It is your responsibility to take care of the world you live in. The earth and this world is a family member. It's a family member. And that's how you have to think about it.
Well, Carolyn, thank you so much for this incredible conversation. As always, you take us very deep and to places perhaps that some of us are afraid to go, but the opportunity that lies in doing so is definitely a gateway, and it always takes us back to spirit and grace.
Adelaide, thank you so much.
I want to just tell people about the very generous special offer. It is invaluable. That is what I have to say. So, Carolyn, thank you so much for giving us extra time.
It's been my pleasure. You're a delightful interviewer. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. We love you, and you're getting lots of emails telling you how much people love you. Brightest blessings. We love you, Carolyn. You've changed my life. We love you, and we love you.
Thank you, and thank you, callers, for me. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Tell your friends to join us. See you again. Have a great rest of the evening.
Okay.